What a game. What a game. What a game. Bryce Harper hit a pair of bombs. Aaron Nola went 5+ great innings. And B-Ball Paul dished out 5 assists. How you doing, Rich?
Name a more iconic trio.
Yes. Obviously, the Phillies, picked up a crucial Game 3 win. That is not the game that we are here to talk about. We will talk about the Sixers' 112-101 loss to the Boston Celtics in their second preseason game. And again, I think it's important that we're here to talk to you about the Sixers game because I don't know if anybody actually watched that. Looking at what we saw from the stands, there weren't very many people there. We understand why, but there's also a lot of people very interested. I'm not going to say excited because that's, it's going to take more than one preseason game for fans to get excited after the offseason that they had. But a lot of people that are interested and invested in this team, and we watched the game so we can get you up to speed.
Let's do it, buddy.
So I guess I'm going to ask you 3 questions here, and I'm going to ask you which ones you buy. Jaden Springer as a useful NBA player, Danny Green back after the injury and his season in Cleveland, or the Sixers' backup center problems being a real legitimate problem. Which one of those 3 do you buy?
I would say the third one I don't buy because I think Paul Reed is going to be the backup center. And I think the things he's doing as a starting center in 2 games against a really tough matchup are hard. The other 2, I would say, I don't completely buy yet, but the signs in the first 2 games of the preseason, okay, we're trending in the right direction there, right?
Yep. So signs of spring, I guess we should probably point out Tyrese Maxey had another strong game, 17 points, 7 for 17 shooting. Not as strong as maybe the first one. Hasn't really gone completely on fire from 3-point range, but we believe in the jumper. It will be there. Kelly Oubre had a fantastic first half. After I had maybe a few tough words for him on our pregame show, had a fantastic first half, ended up with 18 points on 8 shots. I believe at one point he had 15 points on 5 shots there in the first half. He was really good, and we will certainly get into him. But for me, and this goes to where my mind is, I still think Jaden Springer is probably the story of the first 2 games. And he didn't have quite the same statistical output as the other 2, but he ended up with 10 points, 3 rebounds on 4 for 6 shooting, including 2 for 3 from 3. And he just did a number of things, a spin move in traffic, a couple of catch and shoot threes, even contested ones, a couple of decent passes. And again, I think the bar with him is so low offensively where if he just is competent and makes the right decisions and makes enough threes, and that's a very key point, and we're definitely not at a sample size where we can believe in that, he is going to be on the floor. And now that you're 2 games in a row of him showing that, again, Kelly Oubre was great, but I think I have an idea of what Kelly Oubre is at this point in his career. Paul Reed will get better when I'm going to say when. If James Harden gets back, that will help Paul Reed. Jaden Springer, to me, is one of the great unknowns. We've been very confident and giving a lot of praise on his defense. The fact that he is looking like a competent NBA player 2 days in a row, that is going to be my biggest takeaway.
I think for me, so let me ask you, what do you think Jaden Springer's ideal offensive role is? And let's not get too crazy. I mean, everybody's ideal offensive role is to be the primary initiator on a championship team. But I think what we have seen from him in his first couple of years, and projecting maybe optimistically, but not crazily, what do you think that role is exactly?
I mean, it's mostly just stand in the corner, make open shots, and cut when he's off ball, and crash the offensive glass. Quite frankly, he can do that. I don't think you really want him doing too much, but you do want him where if they close out, he can attack off the dribble. If, there's a pass available to him, they rotate over to him, he can make that pass. And I think he's shown enough over these first 2 games where you're certainly encouraged by that.
I think the 3-point shot is everything.
Yep.
And it's been a small sample, but he's made a couple. I actually kind of like the one he missed tonight. It was a little adventurous, and obviously the preseason is the time to get adventurous. But it was funny. I think the one time, and it was different with instead of watching with you on press row, watching it on TV. Yeah. I think the one time we had kind of the old, oh, holy crap, look at that move. Was the Jaden Springer move on Al Horford. Mm-hmm. The best move on Al Horford I have seen since James Harden in the playoffs last year. He had about 4 or 5 of them, I would say. Harden did. I didn't really know. I kind of felt like Shaq on that one. I didn't, I'm a little unfamiliar with your game. That was Obviously, that's not what you are going to rely on Jaden
No.
Springer to do, but it was cool.
But he pulled it off confidently. Like, he
Yeah.
didn't look out of control. Like, he spun, he gathered himself, he went up and on balance. Like,
It's
it was
good.
like, whoa, what the hell just happened here? And it was certainly, and look, preseason, Boston might not be going at 100%, yada, yada, yada. This is, I said it after the last game, that's the first time he really, I watched him and I went, whoa, that's an NBA player. He came out and he did 2 games in a row. And again, making the shots is key. It's going to be the biggest key because, quite frankly, as long as he makes shots and defends, he's going to see time. If you then add in the fact that he's cutting, if you add in a freaking spin move every now and then, if you add in the fact that he's not making mistakes and he's making the passes when there's rotations, if he plays like this, that's a big if. We're not there yet. If he plays this like this, it's really easy to slot him into an NBA rotation. I never would have said that a week ago. I never would have said that.
So another question. Considering where Matisse was when he came into the NBA, and honestly, Jaden's probably still younger than Matisse was.
Well,
when he entered
and that's
the
a
NBA.
big thing. That's like, there's a angel and a devil on my shoulder. The devil's like, oh, remember that month when Matisse just shot the 55% from 3 for a solid month and then reverted back? There's always that 2 games is not a big enough sample size. He looks pretty confident going up. Will he look confident when he shoots 1 for 10 over a 3-game stretch and goes into a shell? That's a big question.
You were all over that month. I believe it was December 2019. Matisse was cooking that month. So when you look at Jaden Springer, and I would say not as tall, obviously, probably not as athletic in terms of just jumping as Matisse. In terms of changing directions, he probably has Matisse a little bit. Certainly doesn't have Matisse with the hand-eye, although the hand-eye got Matisse into trouble. But offensively, how differently or similarly would you treat him compared to Matisse?
I trust him to put the ball on the deck a little bit more.
Yeah.
Which I think is important for Matisse, or important for Jaden, because Matisse, that was obviously never a strong suit. I trust the catch and shoot shot a little more. And I think clearly he's got more ability to finish around the rim. I think the strength advantage that he has on Matisse helps. But it all comes down to the shot. If that shot leaves him, then he's not that much more. You can have the added strength and body control around the rim. You can have a little bit more dribble drive game. If you're not making and taking those shots and forcing teams to guard you, none of that really matters, especially as a off-ball role player.
It is funny in that he has a lot of the same strengths and weaknesses, but because he can put it on the floor a little more, and because he's more of a traditional defender, right?
Yep.
He is a fight over screens guy.
Yep.
He is a get under you. He is a slide your feet and kind of make the ball handler work. He's also very different from Matisse because Matisse was looking for the angles to force the steals.
Yep. And he was better than anyone in the league at that. Legitimately might be the best in terms of off-ball deflections of anyone in the league for his position.
And I think another thing with Springer too is if the Sixers are going to keep pushing the ball like they have in the early going, and I think in this game against Boston, the second game, I think we saw some good stuff and then we saw some bad stuff. We saw, throw it ahead to Tyrese, attacking Derek White one-on-one. That didn't work a couple of times, which is okay. It's the preseason and you are trying to establish good habits and kind of trying to establish a culture of fast-paced basketball, pushing it ahead. I think Jaden Springer also fits into that as well. I think obviously I have some concerns about his ability to finish. We talked about the 2-foot jumping on the pregame pod. If you get him out in transition, then I like him a little more. If you give him a head of steam and the ability to attack the rim, I actually think he can fit into that style a little more.
No, look, I was not expecting to spend this much time in our preseason talking about Jaden Springer, but he deserves it. And quite frankly, with a team where I think a lot of people have been frustrated over the offseason, I think that's probably the nicest way I can phrase that. To have a little bit of youth and a developing player maybe jump into a role that you didn't expect, even if we're putting the cart before the horse a little bit. We just need a little bit of optimism coming into this season for a team that could very well win. We got posed this question on a previous pod, over under 49.5 wins. I think it's fair, but with Joel Embiid, you almost always approach that level. A team that could win 50 wins, and we're struggling to find positives to talk about just because there's so much second round fatigue and Harden fatigue. Having this sort of jolt of energy with Jaden Springer, it's a nice change, of course, for sure.
I'm taking the over, by the way.
Yeah. No, I mean, Joe wins 50 games walking in sleep.
Yeah. And could I see them lose under 50 games?
It
Absolutely.
could.
But
Yep.
it's one of those things where we have a lot of data here that says if Joe is here, expect in the low 50s, and that's what's going to happen.
I agree. We have Lucas asking whether or not we're going to be doing post-game pods as late as this during the regular season. We will try to do regular post-game pods, yeah. And but saying as late as this, I'm not entirely sure what he meant. The game ended like 10 minutes before we started.
This was nice.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy.
It's 9:30 at night on a game that started at 7. Like, yeah, all right, whatever. But yes, we will try to do post-game pods as frequently as we can. I think it's a good thing to give fans.
Well, maybe Lucas has some kids. He's got to get them to bed.
No, look, I'm an old man. 9:30 is late for me. I'm barely awake. I get it completely. Like, if we could have started at 9:25 instead of 9:30, like, sure, I get it. But yes, we will be doing post-game pods.
And this was nice. The Phillies game took a long time, but the Sixers game was it.
I will say, if I forget something that happened during that game, we had 3 TVs going at the same time. I might have been distracted every now and then. If something happened during a couple of Bryce Harper's bombs, like, I might have missed it. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I mean, I remember last season into the first 3 games of the year. Do you remember? I believe it was after they lost to San Antonio in the 3rd game to go to 0-3. Yep. And Doc afterwards said, "Man, we're not ready to win."
And people freaked out.
People freaked out, but it was in the middle of a game where the Phillies were playing in the NLCS, just hitting the ball out of the ballpark all night. So it kind of worked out. And Joel saying, we'll be all right. I know we lost to I don't know how many games the Spurs ended up winning last year. It wasn't a lot.
No.
But it was kind of funny that that was the main panic point during the regular season. And then they won a lot of games after that. Yeah.
There were some annoying points, like the Houston loss. That was a frustrating one when James tried to prove to the world that he was the old James Harden and came up a little short.
Well, and if you read the Ramona report, that was like a big deal.
Point.
And by the way, I also remember that game. That game was an absolute joke how Harden handled it. It also was his first game back in like a month.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure we were on a pod going like, it doesn't really matter. He's just trying to work his way back. I was like, I'm pretty sure it happened.
That was horrible, but he also just came back after being out for an entire month. Yeah.
Are you concerned that Joe hasn't played at all? Like, I know there's no reported injury. I know all this stuff, but this was supposed to be the year. Like last year, he came back with plantar fasciitis. This year, he's good to go, and we just haven't seen him in 2 games. It's a little weird.
I feel like they held him back a lot last year. Although I
think they held him back 1 game.
Although it is kind of interesting because Nurse is on record saying, "Hey, we're going to take the training wheels off this year." He's going to play a lot of minutes. And by the way, I think the training wheels have been taken off for Joe for a long time.
When he misses games, it's usually because he's either injured or it's a back-to-back. Yeah.
So, no, I'm not too concerned about it. I'd like to see him play next week is my point. The NBA preseason isn't the biggest deal in the world. And, he might be a little bit rusty against Milwaukee, but let's see you run up and down the floor a little bit, Joe. I think part of the reason too, and I'm not basing this off of, or I am basing this too much off of Sixers social media stuff. It looks like he's getting up and down in these.
He looks fine. He looks like he's moving fine. It's just, I hate reading anything into the preseason. It would just be nice to see him play. I don't know.
Maybe he's watching the Phillies. He seems like he's pretty into it.
He was. He came in Phillies gear the other day.
And then he tweeted no after the I think it was after the Jeff Hoffman, cousin Jeff home run that he gave up to Austin Riley. But so we will we will see if maybe he was watching the Phillies. But I would like to see him get up and down in the game. It's always fun watching him play in those preseason games too, because basically the other team is not trying to get hurt, and he's just throwing his body around and getting 20 points in 10 minutes too.
Yep.
All I want to see is 1 half. Just get up and down for a couple shifts, Joe. Maybe play for, 5 minutes into the 3rd quarter. Take a seat, and we'll see you in Milwaukee.
Honestly, I would just like to see him play just because when Tyrese Maxey is playing with Joel Embiid, and then when Tyrese Maxey is playing with Joel Embiid and James Harden, and then when he's playing alone, that's 3 completely different roles. I would just like to see what it looks like when he's playing the role that he's most likely going to play this year. We can talk about inefficiency or struggles maybe creating shots for others. It's just without Joel Embiid, it's completely different. I just want to see him in the role that they need him to excel at.
I have a little bit of a hot take that I didn't even run by you watching the game. This is the type of game I miss Shake Milton.
Wow. I agree. I think Shake was an important part of their rotation, especially their regular season rotation last year. He had that stretch in, was it December, where he just won them 2 or 3 games almost by himself when they were, down some depth. They could use a few more ball handlers and pick and roll players for sure.
Well, especially when they are shorthanded too, which again, I know we just said the training wheels have been taken off Joe, but he misses sometimes, and Harden does too.
Yep.
Harden might miss all the games this year. Who knows? But I think Kyle wrote in his piece on PHLY, you can check that out as his observations.
Yep.
He mentioned that Nurse's offense has a lot of east to west going on right now, which is, I think, is like cool to look at, but obviously you do need somebody to get north and south. Ultimately, Shake, for being kind of a fringe rotation player, Shake knew nothing but north and south.
Yep.
He was going to run you over from the guard position. And that was actually a really useful skill when they were down Harden, when they were down Maxey, because I don't know, they threw Tyrese out there tonight, and I'm thinking, like, who else is going to break down the defense here? Who else is going to, Shake might fire up some bad shots. He might run over the guy just because he doesn't have the, as I always make the joke, the shake to get east and west on some of the defenders. But like they would throw the ball to him at the end of the shot clock. And in those games, you wouldn't be like, this is a complete disaster that Shake has the ball. Like he can actually make something happen.
When Mo Bamba's driving down a lane and he gets stonewalled, did you say he didn't have the mo to finish that? The momentum to finish that? No.
Well, he didn't have the mo to play any defense tonight. We're going to get to him in the comments. So I do think when you look at the players on this roster now, maybe Oubre can kind of become that guy where he'll have a good game every once in a while. Although I do think Shake could do it within the structure of an offense a little bit better than him. Shake was a better ball handler than Kelly. I would say Kelly's an okay ball handler, but Shake
Shake's
actually,
better,
he could
sure.
like run an offense and make very basic reads.
Also, he has learned that you are allowed to move your arm and let go of the ball and let it go to another player.
Yeah.
So why am
I?
I shitting on Kelly Oubre? He had a fantastic game today.
Well,
Shake's a better passer for sure.
yeah, and it wasn't crazy reads, but it was basic reads. Anyway, I think if the Sixers are down Embiid, it's going to be a lot on Maxey. I don't really think they have. I mean, George was another guy too, where you want George just catch and shoot threes when like the games actually matter. Some of the games that actually mattered, you didn't even want him in the game. But when you were down some guys in the regular season, like the other, all 82 games count the same, and George would go minivan mode against some of the worst teams in the league.
I mean, especially there's a chance it could end up in the 4-5 area. Getting home court would be big. Like every couple of wins in the regular season for sure. I mean, they don't have as much reliable depth as they had last year. All right, real quick, we'll get back to the game. A quick word from DraftKings. Things are heating up in the ballpark, as we quite literally just saw today. Every team is playing to finish the season strong and make it to the playoffs. With DraftKings Sportsbook, you won't miss a moment of the baseball action. New customers can score $200 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on baseball. Plus, all customers can take a crack at a sweet payday with DraftKings same-game parlays. String together multiple bets from a single game for your shot at a major payout. So what are you waiting for? Download your DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code PHLY. New customers can score $200 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on baseball. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code PHLY. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, licensee partner Golden Nugget Lake Charles in Louisiana, 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. See dkng.co/baseball for eligibility, terms, and responsible gaming resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. So I guess moving on a little bit, one of the three questions I sort of posed at the beginning was Danny Green. And I thought Danny Green had another pretty strong performance. And again, this was a player who I don't think any of us really expected much out of Danny Green to start the season. He ended up with, 8 points on 3 for 6 shooting, including 2 for 3 from 3-point range in 12 minutes. I think he had 8 of those points in the first quarter, had the patented Danny Green step back into a corner 3, had a surprisingly nice hit-ahead pass to Kelly Oubre for a corner 3 that I gave about a 3% chance of working out, but it did.
in real time too.
And to be honest, I mean, look, when he was with Cleveland towards the end of the season, coming off of, what was it, LCL and ACL that he tore in Philly against the Hawks, knee surgery, multiple knee tears. He did not look like the same player, which was understandable in part because he was coming off a major surgery, in part because he was 35, but because he was so old and that injury was so severe, you just didn't know if he's still 36. It could just be aging. After having a year and a half off to work on that knee, he looks better. And again, this is probably the best he's going to look all year, but there's a better chance he can actually contribute every now and then than I think I thought. He just looks like he's moving better than I expected.
Yeah, it was great to see. And I think the other thing you missed was the nice Danny Green cut he had for his first three. That warmed my heart. Yep. The little Danny Green strong side baseline cut. I mean, we haven't seen one of those in a while. And I will say, I am going to be biased for Danny. I completely know that even when he was here and he was actually good in that Miami Heat series a couple years ago, there are a lot of limitations you have to work around. And it was actually a pretty nice fit having him next to Tyrese, Joel, James. Like 3 guys who can dribble, handle, do all those things. Danny's not really that guy. I will fully admit that I want Danny to succeed. Mm-hmm. I love Danny Green. He's a very good guy. I kind of enjoy watching a guy who can't dribble succeed in the NBA. Like I find that you see those stories.
This explains why we were such big Robert Covington fans all those years.
Yeah, we do have a soft spot for guys who like literally don't know how to dribble. But it has been good to see him look like, kind of doing normal Danny Green stuff. Now, will he hold up in even regular season games? I don't know, because like when teams put him on an island and he's got to move left to right, like I think his feet are going to look like they're in cement. And so I'm fully aware of his limitations, but I've liked what I've seen. Do you make anything about, he did play under Nick Nurse. He won a title under Nick Nurse, Mr. 3 rings. Do you make anything of kind of him reuniting with Nick Nurse?
I mean, I think that certainly played a part in his desire to come back. I think Nick Nurse certainly knows how to utilize him, but I think ultimately most coaches know how to utilize him, and he knows how to play under most schemes. Who was it, the player that came here? It's Glenn Robinson, who's like, I don't know my role. And it's like, you stand in the freaking corner and you shoot and you play defense. Well, Danny Green's a little bit like that, except he knows that, and he's willing to buy into that. So I don't necessarily know if the coach matters too much. It's mostly just, can he get back physically to where he was, or at least close to it? And can he put off aging as he gets into his late 30s? So I think it certainly played a role in him coming here. But in terms of like role or anything like that, like he's Danny Green. I think most people understand how to use him.
What did you expect? Did you think he was going to make the roster coming into training camp?
I think he had a chance because there's a couple other people who have underperformed. And like, Petrusev, I didn't necessarily think had a great chance, and he certainly hasn't shown a whole lot so far. Now, I thought he had a chance, but now I'd say he's a pretty strong, I wouldn't say a lock, but I think he's a pretty strong case. Very strong case, probably, considering the other options.
It's also probably just not a bad guy to have around, because I think he's probably pretty happy to still be playing in the NBA. He's somebody.
He's not going to require 20 minutes per night. Like, he's not going to, complain, you don't think?
And look, like, getting through the regular season is important, as we say all the time. And, guys who don't necessarily fit in a playoff rotation can still help you get to be in a good spot in the playoffs. And
Glenn Robinson didn't know his role. That was one of those quotes that just shook me. Like, how do you not know you're Glenn freaking Robinson? How do you not know? Anyway,
those 1920 Sixers, man, that was not a fun group. I mean, do you remember when Glenn Robinson and I guess it was Burks was the other one who came over from?
Yep.
Remember we made the jokes about how it took like the Oregon Trail to get them across the country or whatever. Time. And then they ended up being Alec Burks and Glenn Robinson. It wasn't like, like the greatest haul in the world.
Well, I mean, Burks had a stretch there where I think fans bought in. And it's like, no, there's a reason he bounces around.
Well, he knows how to dribble the ball and shoot.
He does. And at that point, they didn't have anybody else who could do that.
No. Yeah. And Danny Green can't dribble the ball, but he can shoot. And he does all the
It's like
things.
when we get Devon back and we're like, oh my God, that's an actual radio guy. He's the best person ever. Just because we don't have that skill set. And Devon's valuable, but like he will stand out is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So we'll see. You know, I don't think Danny should be in like the rotation come opening night, right? I mean, maybe he will be. Honestly, I'm not even sure about that at this point. Kind of depends on.
He's another one who I think would look better with James on a floor.
Totally.
Yeah.
What do you mean? The guy who dribbles the ball all the time?
Right.
Danny Green would look better with him? Absolutely. 100%. So, yeah, I think he's just a good guy to have around though. And like, look, if he only plays, you know, once a week, twice a week, and you know, he gives you 10 to 15 minutes, that's probably good for his joints, right?
Yes. As an older gentleman myself, a couple fewer minutes definitely helps the joints, especially the day after.
Come on.
I appreciate you looking out for us old men, Rich. I appreciate it. All right. Outside, I think we touched on the backup center spots. But man, watching Paul Reed, and Paul Reed statistically had a fine game today. What do you end up with?
Like
Paul Reed,
5
yeah, 5 for 9, 10 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists. I think when you watch it, it's a little more out of control than those numbers would suggest. And then you add in Mo Bamba, who's a different story, but just not contributing in any good way. I think Paul Reed will get better when he's playing 12 to 15 minutes per night, primarily as Embiid's backup, with James Harden, if he does show up, spoon feeding him shots and short rolls. Whereas right now, we talked about this the other day. It's like, yeah, no, I'm glad Nick's empowering some of the young players, but that comes with some responsibility too. And Paul hasn't necessarily balanced, which is fine. It's game 2 of the preseason, but he hasn't been great so far. But Mo Bamba was just terrible these 2 games.
Awful.
Like if they miss time, I'm worried about the backup center spot. I think Paul Reed will work his way back into being a capable and reliable backup center. I'm worried about Mo.
So let's start with Paul.
And again, there's probably a reason that the former fifth pick in the draft becomes a minimum salary guy. So
let's start with Paul. Are you worried about him losing his backup center mess?
No.
Because he has more on his plate, though.
I worry a little bit. Like he's one of those players who I think when you give him a little bit of rope, he'll take a lot of rope. And I think he's much better when this is one thing, again, we talked about it the other day. Doc Rivers was wrong because he played 2 of the worst players in the league over Paul Reed in DeAndre Jordan and Montrezl Harrell. And we criticized him for it. We'll continue to criticize him for it. He wasn't necessarily wrong to ask Paul to play a very defined role, because I think when Paul's playing that defined role, he doesn't freelance as much. He sticks to his strengths, doesn't use his weaknesses. When Paul Reed is rolling to the rim, switching on defense and crashing the glass, he's a very valuable NBA player. When he tries to ISO from 20 feet out, a little less valuable.
Completely agree. And you could tell, like, I forget what the exact quote was. I was talking to him after, I think it was game 1 of the Nets series last year, where he had that crazy move and he played really well in that game.
Right.
And I think I gave him like an offhand question, like, would have Doc have yelled and screamed at you? And he was like, basically like, yeah, he would have yelled and screamed at me. And I think Paul had gotten sick of Doc. I think Paul and maybe D House.
Well, and Paul just really wanted to play. Like if you told him to do anything and like, if you don't do this, you're not going to play, he probably would have listened. But now that he's established as sort of like the backup center, he has a coach who's empowering him. Again, first half of the season, experiment, do whatever you want, as long as Paul can then flip a switch and not throw possessions away when the playoffs come around. He'll need to show that.
Well, look, there's a push and pull. Like, you're right. Doc was right to focus on those strengths, but he also was wrong to play Trez ahead of him. That was crazy. Like, yeah, Paul is a viable, good backup center. Trez was not an NBA rotation player last year.
And DeAndre Jordan was worse.
Yeah. So overall, it will be interesting. He has not played well in these games. I would posit this to you, though. Is Porzingis just a bad matchup for him? Like,
he's huge. He's very tall. He's a very tall human being.
Yeah. And I think we have complimented Paul and that his craft has gotten a lot better around the rim. Some of those flip shots, some of those spin moves.
It's tough when the guy has 8 inches on you. Yes, you're right.
And I think Porzingis, his positioning was good enough. They were playing him in a very deep drop coverage where he's around the rim, where, let's say if Paul was playing against Mo Bamba, he might be able to just run around him and score. But against Porzingis, it feels like a lot of times in these first couple games, he's having to make those flip shots over top of Kristaps.
Yep.
And it's been unsuccessful. And I don't think that is all surprising. That said, Kristaps is a pretty rare guy in the NBA. They've called him a unicorn. They still call him that, by the way, even though he's like, that was the term when everybody thought he had like super duper star potential.
Yeah.
And yet people still call him that.
I mean, there just aren't that many like true legit stretch fives who can also protect the rim. But to your point, when he was called a unicorn, people thought he would do that and score like 26 points efficiently. And that outside, what did he average last year? 22, 23, something in that range. And that was a career year. He's been good. He hasn't been as good as people thought, myself included. I was very big on the Kristaps.
So my general point on the backup center is I am not worried about Paul. I mean, I'm a little worried about him handling the responsibility, but there is a very good NBA backup center there. We've seen that. Like, we've seen that in the playoffs, that he's a very good backup center in the NBA. I mean, God, think about game 1 against the Celtics last year. Like, just having the stones to get that rebound, that loose ball at the end of the game, and then make the free throw. Like, remember Harden gave him, he had an N1, I think, too, or he made 2 free throws. I forget exactly what happened. He was massive, and that was a key spot. And I do love that Paul Reed just has it's just like, I don't care. This doesn't faze me. And
he'll give you effort every game.
Yep.
Every game.
So
MJT in the chat bringing up Isaiah Joe. Don't do that to me, man. I mourn the loss of Isaiah Joe almost every day.
Okay.
You don't got to bring that up.
So I'm not worried about Paul. He should be the backup center when the games actually matter, and the big guy is here.
You are worried about Mo. All right. Before we get to that, a quick word from Game Time. Watching tonight's Phillies game turned out to not be stressful, and I'm very, very thankful of that. It was terrific. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful either. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Checked out prices for standing room only for the Phillies tomorrow. Tough one. Bit out of budget. But I was looking through those tickets while we were watching the Sixers game. Might have been multitasking a little bit. And while I haven't had a chance to pull the trigger yet, Game Time giving me a view of the seats before I buy means I'll know what I'm getting into when I shell out just a truly absurd amount of money to get into Citizens Bank Park. Game Time is the place for last-minute tickets. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. You get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets for the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code PHLY for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Yeah, Mo's been terrible. I don't know any other way to phrase that. Both games, he's been really, really bad. And again,
bad at what?
Basketball.
Oh,
did you have something more specific?
No. I just kind of wanted you to expand on that.
He's been caught in no man's land defending pick and rolls. He hasn't contested shots. He's also given up lobs in between. His rebounding's been bad. Like, you're huge, pursue the ball. His shot selection's been bad. He's tried to put the ball on the floor and been a complete disaster. I have anything. And look, he's a good kid. He's big. He's got some skills. He can legitimately shoot the 3 ball when it's going for him. He has to put way more of that together to earn a spot in the rotation.
I mean, you mentioned at the start, the offense and those things, you have to finish easy layups. You have to get rebounds, all those things. How many balls was he going to let over his head tonight?
His defense was bad today.
In the third quarter, you were 7 feet. How tall is he? 2, 3, something like that?
He's big. He's big.
He's huge. He is big. Good. You're nailing the specifics right now. But I feel like we have been kind of spoiled watching Joe play that count mass game in the drop coverage, and he's had some real battles, Trae Young at his absolute best against Joe in the cat and mouse game. That was some of the worst cat and mouse defense I have ever seen in my life. How many balls he just let Neemias Queta, who again is another guy who, if that guy plays Joe puts 3 fouls on him in about 20 seconds and gets him out of the game. He looked like, it was unbelievable. Like he looked like Ronald Acuna watching the ball go over his head the entire time. To make a cross-sport reference here, it was awful. And I just was like thinking, Mo, how about you back up a step and just make Peyton Pritchard or whoever the hell has the ball, make him make a floater.
Yeah.
Just give him a chance, you know? Like, and I felt bad on a couple of those possessions. Springer was actually chasing around the screen okay. And it's like, you have a good recovery guy.
Yep.
How about you
let him have a chase down block, just protect the lob.
How about you put the onus on the ball handler?
Yep,
but
I agree.
The first rule of drop coverage is don't let the ball go over your head. Right. It's literally the first thing. And he did it like 4 times in a row. Yeah. And by the way, not his first year.
No, it's not. No, it's not even his first contract anymore. No, he's really struggled. Again, hopefully it doesn't matter because Joe plays and Reed, but it's going to matter at some point. Like Joe's not playing 82. No. You're going to need him at some point, right? He has not been reliable in any real way.
At least when you mentioned the stretch with Shake last year at kind of the beginning of December, late November, early December. Like they had to play Trez in those games, and Trez wasn't good, but like he did like 1 or 2 positive things, right?
No,
like,
he's been better than Mo.
So look, when the bar is Trez and you're not clearing it, right. We got some issues here. So
Trez, who hasn't been able to jump in 3 years, you're still not clearing that bar. Yeah.
And I feel like I've always had a soft spot for Bamba just because the game where Joe scored 50 on him and Bamba had like 35. Remember, he was making all those threes in Philly and Joe just said.
Well, that's part of it too. Like he's a little bit like Kelly Oubre where like he's big. He can shoot threes. He can get hot from the perimeter. There's going to be games where it's like, man, can you please stop shooting that? But there are games where he's going to get hot. And it's like if he just makes the right plays more often than he does, he's not going to be a star, but he's a useful, serviceable NBA player, and he's just never been there.
MJ just asked, was Mo this bad with LA? He was hurt. So it was kind of a weird trade where Orlando kind of gave up on him. Yep. And he goes to LA.
Orlando had a bunch of bigs. Like you could maybe find an excuse there, but like he was a former fifth pick in the draft.
And look, I get that he's the brother of the star player, but they chose Mo Wagner, which Mo Wagner is a guy who kind of he's a good player, but I think Mo Bamba should be ahead of him. So
I'm sorry, Mo was a 6th pick in the draft. My apologies about that. We are a stickler for accuracy here.
Okay. That's important. Yeah, I have not been encouraged by him. And the funny thing, too, is like when you hear him talk, he's like a really smart, kind of cerebral type of guy. And he's even gotten some claims like, does he actually love basketball? And I know that he's kind of pushed back on that. And I'm sure he does love basketball. You got to stand in the right place when you're on defense. That's just what it comes down to. And tonight was a complete failure in that regard. And just very basic things. Like, I don't know, man. Like, think about when you're kind of a drop.
You've got to stand in the right place. You make it sound so difficult.
When you're a drop coverage big, you got to be good at that because if you're not good at that, then there's so many other ways defenses can expose that type of player. If you're not good at the one thing you're supposed to do, I don't know. So it was pretty rough.
You know who else was rough? Tobias is a real. And look, I don't necessarily care too much because Tobias is going to be who Tobias is. But shot 2 for 9, 9 points, didn't make a 3. Again, I don't really care too much because I know, what is Tobias, 30, 31 at this point? Like he's not at the age where he's still going to get better. Not yet at the age where we expect him to get worse. He just kind of is who he is. And maybe every now and then you can put him in a certain role and unlock 10% better Tobias. But like, you know who he is. He's not going to be this bad all the time. It almost feels silly to talk about it because who really cares who's good and bad in a preseason game if it's not projectable going forward. I expect him to bounce back to where he was, but he was not good.
Yeah, I think Tobias, would you say he frustrates you more than anybody who plays? Like what?
No, Kelly Oubre.
Well, I think the the funny thing is the chat is kind of going crazy about like Tobias not playing that well.
Yeah.
And I would tell you that Derek is the same exact way.
Yeah.
Like watching Tobias, there was the one pull-up jumper where he could have went all the way to the rim and he settles for what? Like a 6-footer and he missed it.
No, that baseline one. Yeah, no, he's and again, I give him a lot of credit. Not just because he's a good guy, but because he buys into his role. He'll defend if you ask him to. If you want to be on ball, he'll play on ball. If you want to be a low usage off ball player, he'll do it. And I give people who embrace different roles like that, especially this year where he's going to be in a contract year, I give them a lot of credit. But he does drive the ever living, like he drives me insane for sure. For sure.
It's the problem with him though is that
and there has been a little too much. And look, they're missing 50 points from their lineup, right? Been a little too much Toby time for my liking.
The problem with him is the process is the same every time.
Yeah.
Right. There's not like a way for him to leverage his ability against a worse team. I mean, the way against a worse team he leverages his ability is he posts them up. And sure, when he gets the likes of Peyton Pritchard on the block, yes, that is a higher percentage shot than it is when he's the first option in Los Angeles. But it's still not great.
Yeah. And again, I think when the regular season comes around and when, there is your regular players back, I think he's going to be the same person he normally is, which again, I give him credit for embracing his role and defending. When the regular season and Joe and Harden get back, the only thing I'm really going to be is like, can you please just take more threes? Can you stop going into a shell when you miss? Because he's not going to have these post-ups and all that to drive me insane. But when the post-ups and the ISOs and the pull-ups are there, yeah, that frustrates me for sure. All right, we have Kyle Neubeck joining us live from the arena. Real quick, though, before we get to Kyle. Kyle, you're going to have to wait and listen to my wonderful ad read so that we can then let you in on the final segment. Foco is a leading manufacturer of sports and entertainment merchandise with a product line that includes apparel, accessories, toys, collectibles, novelty items, and more. It's the best officially licensed gear for all sports and fandoms. With it being football and tailgating season, it means overalls, hoodies, hats, sunglasses, bags, everything you need for a game. Foco has it. And Foco has hooked PHLY up and provided awesome pieces for our sets. Foco always has our back for Philly sports, and they have yours too. Get the best gear around by using the link in our description. For all non-presale items, use a promo code PHLY for 10% off. All right, Kyle, you there? I cannot hear.
I think we're having a little trouble with Kyle's audio.
Oh.
It's preseason for us.
It is preseason for us. We'll pretend that Kyle is giving us fantastic insight into what Nick Nurse said after the game and about Joel Embiid's availability.
I'm definitely going to give you fantastic insight whenever
there
we
we go.
figure this
there
out.
We go. The pod just got 10% worse. How you doing, Kyle?
Yeah, what's up, fellas? Well, Derek missed his cue by about 10 minutes, so that's how you know he's a professional podcaster. Obviously, as you guys both know.
What cue are you talking about? I don't even know what
the cue you got in Slack at 10:08.
I'm not in Slack. I'm in the middle of a show.
Well, listen, you knew somebody was coming on, and I'm going to give you grief because you missed the cue, just like you do every day to start the show. Anyway, as you guys both know, the Wells Fargo Center is always a complete disaster with things happening around us. There is a slightly better media room this year, so whenever you guys actually make it here, you'll be thrilled about that. But go Phils, obviously, most important thing of the night.
They waited for us to leave.
Yeah. No, they did.
Well, and everybody, we always made the joke that when we tried to podcast in the past, you would sit in one of the rooms of the Wells Fargo Center and there was just chaos. There was just always somebody moving something or banging pots and pans. It was unbelievable. But Kyle, let me ask you, what did Nick Nurse have to say after the game?
So he wasn't thrilled with the offensive performance. I think probably all of us would agree they were not at their sharpest anywhere except for maybe transition and pushing the pace a little bit. He was more satisfied with how they played game one against Boston than game two, which I tend to agree with. But all these guys are pretty much viewing it as a work in progress, new roles, new roster, new guys. And I think the big thing is Joel Embiid, and I know James Harden might not ever play for them again, but the two biggest pieces have not played. So, I mean, we can hyperanalyze everything and say things are not running as intended, but the real problem is the guy who's going to be the fulcrum of the offense and the captain on defense has not suited up yet. So, really don't have a clear picture of what's going to happen yet.
About that before the game. What are the chances that we see Embiid there for Monday's preseason game?
So our buddy Timmy Strawpoles asked the question before the game, essentially asking Nick, like, look, these guys are both healthy as far as we can tell. Is it a fair expectation that they'll both play Monday? And Nurse danced around it a little bit, said it is a fair expectation, but, you know, I don't know if I would bet on it, I think was the wording was something along those lines. So giving himself some outs and giving the team some outs. I don't know if we're going to see either one of those guys on Monday. So, you know, this wonderful preseason that we have to cover just marches on as we cover the Jaden Springer victory tour. I think is probably the highlight, other than Kelly Oubre making a bunch of threes tonight.
No, we spent at least 20 minutes on Jaden today. I never expected to spend this much time talking about Jaden Springer. I'm happy to be wrong. In terms of
I would say, before you move on, Derek, I wrote this in the recap tonight. My early thing that I think might piss fans off is I have a hunch that Pat Bev might get too many minutes relative to Jaden Springer in the early going. And I think that's the first, like, why is Nick Nurse doing this of the year, if I had to guess.
What else did Nick say stood out there in today's game?
I mean, not a whole lot, quite frankly. These guys lost by double digits to a team that didn't start either their two stars either. I think the overall messaging is pretty boring, but, you know, it is the preseason and they're working through it. Like, look, there are some positive things that they've done. I think he likes that they're trying to get after it defensively. They're not always succeeding at that, and they're fouling too much. I think I heard you guys talking a bit about Mo Bamba. I think one of the most infuriating plays of the entire night was him picking up a foul basically at the other rim, chasing an offensive rebound that he never got close to. I think he's probably been, if he's not the biggest disappointment so far, he's certainly been up there. So that's the kind of stuff that I think Nick has said they want to cut down on, is playing aggressive, but not playing so aggressive that you're fouling and taking stupid fouls.
Kyle, two guys we have not talked too much about tonight. We did talk a lot about Bamba. What'd you make of Tyrese tonight? And on the positive, we didn't really talk a lot about Kelly Oubre, who had that great first half tonight.
Yeah, so Kelly and Tyrese were the two podium guys. As you know, whenever somebody goes to the podium, very special, very important, especially in the preseason. But I didn't love Tyrese. I thought, obviously, the first game against Boston was better. Tonight, I thought he got a little too bogged down in some of the side-to-side DHOs. There are some exceptions to that, certainly. There's a play along the sideline where he coasted by Porzingis, got to the rim and scored. Some other, obviously, you know, his outside touch was not quite there tonight. I do like that he really seems to be taking to this whole pushing the pace, getting out in transition mandate that they've been given. So that's good. I wrote after the game on Kelly, I think if he played like that, or has he played in the first half every single night, he'd be on like a $20 million a year contract. Like, spot up shooter, filling lanes on defense, big body, athletic, and not trying to do too much. But as you guys know, that's kind of the whole problem with Kelly, is that you can only get him to do what I think people want him to do for small stretches of time. And then he does this sort of pull your hair out, infuriating stuff that people don't like. But I was pleasantly surprised by him tonight. And if he can keep playing like that, he's going to lock down a rotation spot very easily.
He is not here to fit in, Kyle.
He's here to stand out, baby.
So I guess in terms of you mentioned him. What do you think of Jaden's performance, and is he on your All-NBA team yet?
I don't know if maybe the second team. I don't know if I can get him on the first team quite yet. I'd say a little bit of or not a little bit, definitely a quieter performance, but you still see a couple of wow plays as we saw the other night. Like I think the big one, I'm sure you guys probably spotlighted, got Al Horford on an island at one point in this game, went right at him, hit him with a spin move into a pull-up mid-range jumper. And that was sort of his game at Tennessee, right? It's something that we saw that was probably going to translate, was that in-between game. But I just think seeing him do that kind of stuff and just mentally be ready for it and ready to attack guys is definitely a step forward, where there was a lot more hesitation. Maybe some of that is the coaching staff, the previous coaching staff, I should say, reining him in a little bit and saying, you're the young guy, you're the rookie, you need to play a certain way. And Nick is just saying, look, you're out there, man, go out and, carve your own lane. So I think we've seen a lot more from him than I expected. And, Nick has been singing his praises, so I would not be surprised if he's right on the verge of a rotation spot coming into the year. I don't think we can lock that in yet, but if he keeps playing like this, it's going to be impossible to keep him off the floor. I'm sure you guys probably have already said that already in 15 different ways.
You mentioned exceeding expectations. Safe to say DG has done that through 2 games for you?
Oh, I mean, I think just Danny being able to move at all is wildly past my expectations.
People say when they play basketball.
I kind of figured at this point, it's like, look, if he can hit some standstill threes, that's fine, and that'll give him a place on the roster, period. But if he can do what he was doing in the first half tonight, where he's obviously his whole strength, his whole career was positioning and intelligence and just being a great team defender. We saw in the Hawks series, you can't ask that guy to be a lockdown, isolation, individual defender. But if he can move well enough that he can, get into passing lanes, create turnovers, and just be in the right spots at the right times, he's somebody that's always going to have value to a team. Got to knock a couple shots down tonight. That obviously helped. If he would have made, I don't know if you guys remember the play, could have been watching the Phillies game at this point. He attempted a reverse layup at one point, and I believe it was the first half. I would have fallen out of my chair if he was able to make that shot. And I didn't get to talk to him after the game in the locker room, but I just love seeing him have enough juice in his legs that he was able to get an attempt like that off.
Well, I told Derek before the game, it kind of reminded me of some of the COVID year games where he was completely, they didn't have any ball handlers, so he was just firing shots up. But yes, he took off from about 8 feet there, and he did not get to the landing zone on that one in the way you would like. So
we love some Danny Green YOLO ball, I would say.
Yeah, a couple pull-ups in transition. We're good to go. We're good to go. Bring back memories. All right, I think that's about all we need from you, Kyle. Go finish up what you had to do at the stadium, and we'll wrap this up.
Well, which is to say basically nothing, because it's the preseason and everybody was watching the Phillies hit dingers all night. Happy to report that the Phillies were drawing
what was going on
the
in the
biggest
studio
applause.
too.
Yeah. All right, fellas. I'll catch you later.
All right. Take care.
See you, Kyle.
And if you have any questions in the chat, feel free to drop them. We'll get to a couple here as we wrap up today's show. Look, 0 for 2 against Boston. Don't care at all.
Don't care.
I really don't care about the score in a preseason game. You're playing without him. Okay, sure, they were missing a few key players too. Playing without Embiid and Harden, might have to get used to one of those two. But the fact that and there's certainly been struggles, and we talked about Mo Bamba a bit there. If Jaden Springer looks like an NBA player, it's a positive preseason for me. It's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. And I saw, I'm not going to try to pronounce that. I'm sorry. But somebody in the chat said that they're curious to see how Oubre plays alongside Embiid. He should get some more open looks. Yeah. I think Oubre in some ways, if he could try to play like Danny Green a little bit.
That would be huge. That
would be Danny Green circa 2015,
sure.
2016.
That's why people like Kelly Oubre frustrate me so much, is because he can do better. He can be a serviceable player. He can help you win. It's just, please do it.
Well,
please.
And you mentioned the passing is so bad, right? It's non-existent.
Yeah.
But Danny's not a passer either.
No.
I know he threw as you mentioned, he threw the full court one the night.
Insane. I can't believe that happened.
That Kelly caught. But again, we're not going to rely on that moving forward. But I do think like if he just leans into smart cutting, smart moving without the basketball, and like corner threes, shots you can make, catch and shoot shots. All right.
And if you don't have it, then kick it out and swing it around and reset the offense instead of taking a horrible 20-foot leaner. That's all. It's really not, you're not asking too much from him.
And, he's a little bit different than Danny Green too, where Kelly Oubre
can run and jump.
Well, yeah, but Danny Green, terrible one-on-one defender, still a pretty smart team defender. Right. Kelly Oubre, not a smart team defender, actually might be able to hold up one-on-one a little bit. So I said this before the game, I'm not giving up on Kelly Oubre being a rotation player. I am excited to at least see that attempted.
I think he'll be a rotation player because they have one other wing.
I'm saying like a good rotation.
Okay, that's a fair point. Look, he can. He 100% can. I'm not confident, but he can. I hope I'm wrong. I truly do. I hope basketball is more fun to watch when you have athletic guys who can run and jump, and he can do that. If he just makes fewer negative plays, he'll have a spot.
Real quick, because again, we've talked about Kelly Oubre and Danny Green for a long time here. Felt like this would have been a good spot for Harden to play. I think there was very few people in that game, just from an optics standpoint.
Sure,
there was almost nobody there. So if he got booed, it was going to be by 4 people in the like the middle section. And also, after the game, it's not like there's a ton of local media there. They're across the street. Everybody's talking to the Phillies after that game. So it did feel like a little bit of a missed opportunity.
Could have been a Friday news dump.
Totally.
Even though it's not Friday, but you get my point.
Would have been a classic Wednesday night
yeah,
where everybody's paying attention to the other thing. And I feel like it's a little bit of a missed opportunity. Now, maybe they'll trot him out. I guess that game is in Brooklyn next week?
Yeah, Monday.
All right, so maybe they'll do that, and that'll be easier.
Or maybe he won't play for another 3 weeks. We really don't know. It was wild going out to Colorado State. And everyone you talk to on both sides of the dispute is like, I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. I have no idea. I don't know what the next hour is going to bring. And both sides, it's the only thing in the world that both sides agree on. And I still think that's mostly true. I don't think anybody truly knows what's going to happen next week.
Well, it's just funny that we could be in a situation where, oh yeah, there's no drama. The practices are fine. He's a professional. But then he's like, I'm not playing.
Yeah.
And what happens when he says that? And does he say that? I don't know. But that's why everybody's going to have to stay tuned for the next couple of weeks.
I mean, we definitely know he wants his money. So he's going to have to be around the team in some form so that 30-day clock doesn't. I don't know. We'll see. Look, he looks good. And we made so many fat suit jokes in the offseason. Physically, he looks fine. When we've seen clips from him in practice, he's looked engaged. I hope he comes and plays and comes to the realization that if he wants to actually get where he wants to go and get that next contract, playing basketball and playing well and being a normal basketball player is the best way for him to accomplish that. I hope he comes to that realization because I think that's where everyone benefits the most. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Are you confident of that?
Yep.
No.
All right. Thank you all for tuning in. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Hit the bell notification. You can get notifications whenever we go on the air. Thank you, Rich, for jumping on, and we will talk to you soon.
We all silly like the mayor.